Well, welcome to Second Take, and today we're going to talk about rhythm. Just how important rhythm is to a lot of things, especially football. We're going to talk about how rhythm affects athletes in general. A special report about how specific athletes in other sports depend on rhythm. We're going to talk about rhythm. Not rhythm and blues, just rhythm. Rhythm and football. Football and rhythm go hand in hand, and we're going to talk about just how important that's going to be and how that's going to affect a lot of college football teams who are going to have a lot of young players all over the country. How many schools don't have a young team? There's never been anything like it. So, we want to discuss what's going to really matter, which teams can find rhythm in youth and inexperience will be the
winners of 2025.
So we're going to break it down and talk about rhythm, and we're going to talk a little bit about how our own little Georgia Bulldogs have a lot to learn about rhythm, but they shouldn't. They were run by the master of rhythm. They were once run by the master of rhythm himself, Mr. Todd Monken, and we'll talk about Todd a lot because he is Mr. Rhythm.
Foot that will take her to the ball. And most players will do some form of a left-right sequence or left foot hop. And when Lauren is jump setting, she tends to get into a hop sequence. Now she'll also do left-right and jump, and there's no right or wrong. What's important is that they get into a setting rhythm, which she does a great job of. She's gotten to the ball, she's done her hop, now she's in the air, but notice her contact point and how her hips are squared away to her target. Full arm extension directly to her target, and no part of her body is going away from where she wants the ball.
So we talked a lot about rhythm and just how important it is for a football team to have rhythm. And any athlete, any sport, whether it's an individual rhythm to the ball or team sports with a rhythm of players all working together, it's got to be tough to get that to actually happen on the field. Coaching, so much of coaching is simply managing rhythm, getting players to do things rhythmically and consistently. So it's not a given that that's going to happen. We wanted to talk about some of the toughest football positions because all positions aren't created equal. We'll talk about that next. The idea came to us, what would be the hardest position in football? Which one is the hardest mentally, physically? Which one's the hardest to play? Well, those might depend on your talent, but when you look at it from a standpoint of exertion, common sense, which position requires the most effort or physical work? I like to think of it in terms of resources. Which position takes the most athletic effort? And this is going to get down to stamina and those kind of things as well. But the hardest position, you can talk about it. My son played center. He played safety. He played mostly on defense as a D-back. He never played corner. He wasn't quite fast enough. But, you know, his buddies were on defense. And he would tell you that, I'll get him on here to talk to you sometime. He just doesn't like to do that kind of stuff. But he played, and he said to me, he demonstrated to me constantly how much more work was required to play defense. You have to run more. You have to cover more terrain. If it was just measured on steps, the cornerback would probably be the most taxed position. Now, the reason we even talk about that is if you know which position is hardest to play, it'll affect the way you make strategy. And by definition, defense is going to be harder. Go ask my son. He told me 1,000 times how much harder they had to work than the offense. You love playing defense. But the offense has the advantage. They have the ball, they know where it's going, and the defense has to guess. So, the cornerback has to be the most mentally and physically taxed position. We can talk about it and debate it, and we're going to look at them all a little bit. But for the sake of argument, we're going to find out that the cornerback is the most hardest defensive position. And all defensive positions are going to be a bit harder because they don't have the advantage of knowing what's going to happen. They don't have the advantage of knowing what's going to happen. And when what's going to happen is applied rhythmically, it's magic. So the cornerbacks, if you're an offensive coordinator, you want to make him have the hardest day he's ever had. It's already going to be hard, but some coordinators make it easy for the cornerback, and that's kind of the idea. It's adding up strengths and weaknesses, handicapping games. A cornerback who's going up against a top receiver, good quarterback, good team, he's going to have a busy day. Well, we've had a refresher course on rhythm. We talked about which positions are the toughest to play. So how do we put that into real world knowledge? How is all we learned today going to affect how we look at college football in 2025? It's going to be pretty obvious that the winners will be the ones who can get their teams to play in rhythm early and with a lot of new faces. All the challenging positions will have to rely on their raw talent. That adds a recipe for exploitation. If some coach can put a recipe together and get his team to play rhythmically, magically, in a very short period of time, that team could win when it may not have the best roster. Penn State is being talked about as being a potential national title team because they have the most returning players of the competitive teams from last year. That's something to be considered. It's which teams actually have the coaching staff to capitalize on the fact that they've got to get people playing well together, rhythm, early, and without the benefit of years of experience playing together. Is there a coaching staff in the SEC, particularly among the top 5 logical candidates, that have an edge in coaching? We decided to rank them a little bit, and we won't do that in any kind of like official order, but let's just talk about the obvious top teams. Texas. You really think they got a great coaching staff that could capitalize on raw talent and get them to play well together early? Yes, they have a good coaching staff. Next on the list will be Georgia. How is their coaching staff? Well, Kirby Smart says it's the best staff he's ever had. Now, he better be right because he's got the same staff this year. Finished 51st in offense, 30th in defense, with top talent. I don't think Georgia fits high on that list of coaches who can immediately take advantage of raw talent quickly. Tennessee, Josh Heupel's coaching staff seems to be, I think they're good, they're solid, they're stable, but sometimes not always as dynamic as you might want, maybe a little too conservative. But it does look like it's a staff that can get kids to play together quicker. He had that turnaround year with Hooker. So yeah, they're high on the list of the type of coaching staffs you need today. Other candidates, Florida. I think Billy Napier actually is a good football coach, and I think Florida is going to be the sleeper team of next year. Probably, end of the day, going to be higher ranked than Tennessee. Tennessee is going to have a little problem actually not having the talent, which is kind of what they've always done. They've kind of hit a plateau of where they can how much talent they can get. We'll see. But I think Florida may have edged ahead of Tennessee and South Carolina, Auburn. All those teams have the nut, the nucleus to score. They've got quarterbacks that have potential, and they've beefed up their receivers. The only question for any of those two teams, South Carolina and Auburn, is how good can their defense get in a hurry? So we wanted to look at that, and as you get closer to actual season, things will change. Good news on Georgia's recruiting front. They just signed a 5-star quarterback, supposedly, but we'll wait till signing day. The salary cap's coming up. Texas just set aside $40 million for NIL. I thought the cap was $20 million, but no one really knows for sure if we're even going to have it. But if those changes come, you won't have to be the miracle coach to win. And when you can have 3-year players, you can just be an ordinary football coach and let rhythm come naturally to your team, which is always the best, of course. But just looking at it from that standpoint, the sleeper team, my prediction of the team that's going to be the most trouble in the SEC, I'm not going to predict that they win the SEC, but I think they will make the playoffs. And that surprise team is the Florida Gators. And also, I think Auburn is going to be a very dangerous football team. Again, without the defense, it's just words. We'll do a full video on the SEC, an updated SEC projection. We did one in January. At that time, we actually thought they were going to make a lot of coaching changes, and we didn't know how the recruiting was going to go. It was way too early, so now we're going to look for that coming up. We're going to do just on time 2025 SEC projection, but this was kind of like a little bump, a little heads up on how it might look. And as you're watching football this season, you're going to see that teams aren't going to be smooth. They won't have the opportunity to get that rhythm of all the positions, and everybody's running smooth. And it could be a chaotic year, but I see it as a golden opportunity for a dark horse to show up, and they can put it all together, and it still might somehow be a pretty good football season. We can all hope.